Hello, this is Dan, the furniture repairman. Today we're going to do a video on repairing a broken chair leg. Now this is a difficult repair for a few reasons. Where the break is, the fact that the wood underneath is very weak, and I believe it had been repaired before at the factory and repaired very poorly. Now we had two of these chairs with the same repair, and we're going to show you how we do it. The reason why I believe it was repaired at the factory is that this tack right here has been painted the color of the chair. Now, nobody's going to paint the chair after they put the fabric on. You paint the chair before you put the fabric on, unless you break it and you're just doing a quick repair to get it out the door and get it sold. Now, unfortunately, that's what happened here. Our customer bought it, and we got to try to figure out how to get them back whole. So what we're going to do is we're going to come with a long threaded rod from underneath right here at this knee joint, and we're going to go all the way up and through to the backrest. Now this is the area we're going to drill through the leg all the way through, and then we're going to drill up into the backrest, and we're going to put a threaded steel rod in there, and then we're going to epoxy it in place, and we're going to epoxy and screw the leg back in place and create a very strong joint that I'll be comfortable with that will hold up. Now you can see I prepped my chair. I pulled the fabric back out of the way and taped it. Don't skip this step. Get the fabric out of the way. Last thing you want to do is ruin that and have to deal with some other repair. I'm going to drill through the bottom of the leg, or where the break is, right here, and I'm going to use a smaller drill bit. I believe this is an 1/8 inch, and I'm going to start with a small drill bit so I can get into this one little tight area where I think I want the threaded rod to come out and pilot hole. Then I'm going to use a larger drill bit, follow the pilot hole, and it's going to come out on the other side of the knee joint. I'm not that concerned where it comes out on the other side. Very important to me that the threaded rod is in this position here on the broken side, because that's where I feel it'll be right in the middle and give the most strength. Now I'm almost through with my pilot hole, and I'm going to switch over to my larger drill bit. You can see right there. And here comes the big boy, and he's going to punch right through, and we're going to have half of our hole drilled. Then what we're going to do is put the leg onto the chair and complete the hole. So we're going to punch through right here, and the only reason we need to punch through is I'm going to put the chair leg on top now, and I'm going to drill downwards following my hole and create the second hole that's in the chair itself. There is no other way you're going to get the angle and the position correct. You can't eyeball it, you can't measure it. You may find the right spot, but you may have your drill at the wrong angle, and that's going to just create a lot of other problems. Doing it this way gets you as close as possible. So I've gone into the backrest a little bit. I'm going to remove that, and then what I'm going to do is continue into that hole that I've drilled and make it deeper. Now I'm going to go into there about 1.5 inches, and all of a sudden I hit a hollow spot, which made me a little worried. I didn't think I punched through, but I'm checking right here to make sure I didn't come out the side of something. But I think what's in there is another dowel joint or something, because the backrest has a hollow spot. So I'm taking my steel rod. We're going to slide it in the hole we just drilled. We're going to take the leg. We're going to slide it on top. Here I'm checking. I don't want the steel rod to be sticking out the top of the leg. I want it to be just below the surface so I can fill it with some putty and make it all disappear. Now it's a little bit off. It's not quite lining up perfectly. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to use my trusty Dremel, and I'm going to hog out a little bit of wood so that the steel rod can sit in there correctly. When wood breaks, it's very common for parts of it to expand. It has to do with the bound tension in the wood. If you've ever put a board on a table saw and you'd run it through, and all of a sudden you see one side of it just kind of going in a crazy different direction, or the board pinching itself together, you'll understand this. It took me a little bit of time to understand that that's what happened when things break, because they will tend to go together almost all the way, but not quite. So when wood gets separated, it will expand or change in slight ways. Now I'm working on the chair leg right here. Same procedure. You can see I'm hitting some of those finish nails they put in when they try to do the previous repair. They're causing us a little bit of problem, but the Dremel goes right through them. In the trades, we call this fitting a piece. And you'll hear a lot of old timers say you need to cut on that until it fits. So there's trial and error. And here we go again. We're going to see if we can get this to seat down. I'm making sure my rod is in there nice and tight. I'm pushing it. And we're going to slide this down and we're going to see if we can get a good fit on this. I'm pushing it tight. I'm pushing it down. And what I want it to do is to not rock back and forth. I want to be able to push it in there and for it to sit right in there. Now I'm pretty close on this, but what I'm doing is it's still moving around a little bit more than I'd like it to, which means it's kind of rocking on a center point. And I think what's happening is my threaded rod isn't quite able to slide back as far as it can. So I'm just going to come in here with a little larger drill bit and I'm going to hog that hole out a little larger. I'm not that worried about making the threaded rod in there loose because I'm going to pack it with epoxy. And when that all dries, I'm going to have a nice, strong joint in there. So what I'd rather have is the leg sitting very tight, wood against wood, right here in this corner. So we're going to make that hole a little bit bigger, and then we're going to see if that cures our issue. So we're going to put our threaded rod back in place, and we're going to slide our chair leg back in, and we're going to keep going. Persistence will get you to where you want to be. Don't settle for almost there. Take your time. If you got to walk away from it and come back, walk away from it. But right now, I am looking at this and I'm feeling how tight it sits. And now I'm taking a quick picture. You can see right here. There's nothing holding this in. No screws. Just that threaded rod through the top holding that thing in position. So I'm going to put a couple screws through this horizontally. Now I have my screws through horizontally. You can see how tight this is fitting now. There's the wood screws, or sheetrock screws is what I use. And this is sitting nice and tight. What I'm going to do is take this off and we're going to get this ready for epoxy. I'm blowing off the area and then I'm going to put my gloves on. I use inexpensive food service gloves because I use a lot of them. And I really don't need them to last that long for something like this. I put on 2 to 3 pairs of glove at the same time. The reason I do this is during my glue up, I get epoxy on my hands and I may have to touch a piece in an area where I don't want to transfer epoxy to. And it's very simple for me to pull a glove off and have a clean glove underneath. It's very hard to pull a glove off and then put on a new glove, especially while your epoxy is starting to set up and you kind of have a clock hanging over your head. So on this glue up, I actually put on 3 pairs of gloves and I use them all up through the entire process. Now here I come with my epoxy. I've already mixed it. We'll put a link to it below. And I'm just using a tongue depressor to push it into the grooves. Now it's important to force it into all the different grooves. Don't just kind of brush it on there and think it's going to get in there some way on its own. The epoxy is pretty thick and it will span over certain gaps, and you don't want that. You want it inside the gap so when it dries, it grabs onto those gaps, almost like Velcro, and that'll give you the adhesion that you're looking for when it's dry. And what I'm going to do next is just tip a little bit into the hole we made for the threaded rod. We're going to let that go down inside of there, and we're going to take our threaded rod and we're going to insert it. And I've got a little paper towel here because there's going to be a lot of epoxy pushing out as I insert it. I want to see the epoxy push out of that guy. I want it so filled up that I know there's no gap. Now what I'm going to do is keep applying the epoxy all through this area. I'm going to use my little tongue depressor here and basically get some behind the threaded rod so it attaches in there very well. I'm going to keep painting it in place. Now I put epoxy on both pieces, or any adhesive for that matter. I put it on both pieces that are being attached. I don't just put it on one piece and hope it attaches to the other piece. And again, the reason comes is that the epoxy will span over certain gaps and grooves, and I don't want that. Now here I'm taking off my first set of gloves because I got epoxy all over them and I need to touch my chair leg. So this takes me all of a few seconds to do. They're gone. Now I'm going to grab my chair leg with a fresh, clean pair of gloves on my hand, and we're going to start putting some epoxy on the back of that guy. So it's the same procedure. I'm going to use my tongue depressor. I'm going to force it inside of all the cracks because I want the epoxy inside of these cracks also. And when I put this together, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to have epoxy from one piece touching raw wood from the other. I'm going to have epoxy that's been forced in all the grooves, touching epoxy on the other piece that's been forced in all the grooves. And what I won't end up is a situation where it is adhesive starved, but there's not enough adhesive in the spot. And then right now what I'm doing is, it's hard to see off camera, is I'm pouring epoxy down through that hole right there for where the threaded rod is going to be. And I'm going to use my chopstick and I'm just kind of sliding it in there. And I do apologize for not having this in frame. So when I have enough epoxy down through that hole and I move it around and I feel comfortable, I'm going to put this right on top and we're going to slide it down in place. And what I'll probably do at some point is just pour a little extra epoxy in the top of that hole. But the first thing I want to do is get it seated and put my screws back in place. Now, off comes another pair of gloves because I have epoxy on them or something, and I want to touch this chair, and I don't want to have to worry about transferring glue all over the place. So I'm going to put a little epoxy on these screws. This is something I'm very fond of. And the reason why is this chair was broken and fixed and broke again. And the wood that is being screwed into may not be as strong as it was originally. So a little bit of epoxy there. Even though it's a fresh area that I did put these screws into, will dry and just make that much stronger inside of there. So I got to get a good hold on the chair. And sorry, we're blocking the camera, but you can see it seat right there. That screw pulls it nice and tight. And I'm going to do the other side. And I know I have it tight against the chair where it should be. Now I have my threaded rod in the top, and we're going to back it off a little bit. I have my cross braces up top. I measured and cut these earlier when I had my leg dry fitted. So I made sure the leg was sitting in the right position. I just have a long screw through here. I'm going to drive it through the bottom of the foot. And what that's going to do is make sure that as that piece dries, that leg stays in the correct position. Now I'm adding a little bit of epoxy in the hole where my threaded rod is. And I'm going to just keep an eye on it for the next few minutes as it drains down in there. I'm just going to keep adding just a little bit more and a little bit more. Now I'm cleaning off my excess epoxy with denatured alcohol. Even though I got tape wrapped around everything, I'm just going to wipe down whatever squeeze out I have, take a final look at everything. Now this is a close-up of the joint. It's nice and tight right there. I feel good about it. And here you see the other side. Also nice tight joint. We're going to let this dry overnight. It's the next day. I've taken the brackets off the top and I'm testing this leg, and you can see it's nice and strong. I'm very happy with the way this came out. It's straight, it's strong. I'm sure it's going to hold up. I need to staple the fabric back on, put my tacks, and I have a few little spots to touch up. That'll be other videos, but for now, the structural part of that is all done.